Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Leo. How's it going?
I am very well, thank you, my friend. And I believe, because I'm very knowledgeable about these things, happy second Easter in the great city of Barcelona.
Yes. Second Easter, because one wasn't enough. They have to celebrate again.
Well, look, all your fellow countrymen are at work today, but you're just riding through, aren't you? Sorry, everyone's off work, but you're riding through.
It's actually really nice. I like working on a holiday. It means that there's no construction going on. There's no noise. Everybody's sleeping in. It's pretty chill. So yeah, I enjoy a working holiday.
Yeah, I like it. There's nothing better than working on a day where your email doesn't explode. Which probably isn't the case for you, because obviously your US email is going to explode. But I find that I can sometimes it's going to be a heavy weekend of work for me. And then I go and do 2 hours on a Saturday morning and I'm done because there's nothing else disturbing me. There's something magical about that, isn't there?
It is. It's great.
Well, look, happy second Easter to you, my friend. Always nice to see you. So, for people new to the pod, welcome to Good Morning Hospitality Europe. I'm Leo Walton. I'm joined by my very good friend, Sarah Nan Dupree. Sarah, come on. Sun's shining in Barcelona. What have you been up to?
Sun is shining in Barcelona. I have basically been terrace hopping, which is what people do here in Barcelona. So I have been on a terrace pretty much all weekend. I went out, I had a dinner with a friend on Thursday, which turned into a slumber party, which you never really do when you're in your 30s, but it was great. It was like, hey, you've had a couple drinks, don't take your motorcycle, come hang out, spend the night at my house. It was great.
I like that. I really like that.
And girl talk, and it was nice. And then, Friday was pretty chill. Saturday was a boozy incident. I had a barbecue with some friends. And then yesterday as well, I just went out for lunch and was basically on a terrace all day. It was great. The weather's fabulous.
Amazing. Good for you. I've just got to find someone who wants to have a slumber party with me, haven't I? That sounds so
You
fun.
really do. I highly recommend. It's a good vibe. Somehow the older you get, the more fun it is.
There you go. That's not true of everything in life. So good that we found something that gets better with age. Good. All right, nice. Well, I was at a wedding. A friend of mine, very good friend of mine, got married on Saturday night, and that was fabulous. It was dancing, lots of sort of drinking and merriment, which was great. I got home at 12:30, which for me is late. For then, my daughter, unfortunately, decided to get sick or was sick until 3 a.m. So a 12:30 sort of sensible bedtime became a 3:30 less sensible bedtime. So there's the challenges, but she's fine. It's one of those nights where they throw up and then they're sort of fine in the morning.
You should have led with, I went to a wedding, I went to bed at 3:30, and then people would have thought you were cool, but you had to ruin it.
Well, part of the adventure though, right? It's all part of the last 3 hours was just some great dad life, it was good. And then we were fairly chilled yesterday. So yeah, here we are. Well, look, there's lots to talk about. I'll go first if I may, Sarah. I'm excited that we get to talk about M&A in the space.
I am too.
It feels like it's been a while since we've done one of these, right?
Yeah, it has. Outside, I think the biggest one that came out previous to this was the Vacasa and Casago merger. So
I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah, I do think it's been that long. Well, anyway, without further ado, so we have activity again from the very busy, it seems, Holidu, who have acquired French company. And let's have a look. I hadn't heard of this company before this, so I'd be interested to get your take as well, Sarah. So Cyvasion, that operates two of France's leading rental portals, Gîtes.France and Chambrehotes.France. So Gîtes are more catered. They're sort of catered big houses where you get breakfast, and the Chambrehotes is more short-term rental. But this adds 35,000 properties to Holidu's platform and brings with it 20 million annual unique visitors. And obviously, significantly bolsters their reach in France. We know Holidu have got form for this, so they have been busy on the M&A front, as have their German competitor Home to Go. So this is, I think this is typical for the European market. They do seem to be the ones making the moves. What's interesting, though, is that the timing around this, so it also coincides with them raising 46 million euros, right, with the aim of accelerating the AI roadmap, which is in itself significant because that Holidu have been leaning into the AI thing for months, I would say, and also expanding its PMS business while executing further market expansion. So clearly, this is a move for the French market, which is highly, highly competitive. I think just last week we were looking at, the figures, and France remains Europe's top most sought after destinations. Your fellow countrymen in the US seem to love coming over, can't get enough of it. And it feels to me like what they're doing is part of the broader strategy, and we've said this a couple of times on the pod, which is taking guests that potentially aren't booking on Airbnb or haven't been booking on booking.com and haven't been using Holidu previously, using things like Gîte and Chambre Hôtes, which if you have a look at their websites, they're a little bit old school, right? So it's a couple more, seems like a play for the 90s, the 90s host, the 90s guest that potentially these companies have not invested in their tech stack in the way that Holidu has. So it seems to me that what Holidu bet they can do is bring the cost down of these businesses, but also, now allow those guests to see the other properties that they have on their marketplace while they're booking. Another part of the deal, which I've been reading about, and again, this is not a certified fact, but it seems that one thing they're going to do is, if you are a host with Cybevasion on one of their platforms, you will now get the benefit of the Holidu PMS as well. So if you're a host, suddenly you get an integrated listing and you can put that on multiple channels. So it's cool because, again, we've said this before, but it bears repeating to people that haven't listened to previous episodes. I think their bet here is that they can find supply that potentially is not plastered all over the internet and has quite an old school coming to it, and they can plug it into the Holidu PMS if the host chooses to then say, well, now we can put you across multiple channels and use it in a more sort of tech-enabled way. Right. So I think it's a very interesting, significant moment. One, because I think the raising of 46 million euros in and of itself is not insignificant, but also with it the fact that they're really making a play for this French market. It goes back to the fact that they've clearly found something here in their M&A activity, which they think is scalable, repeatable. So we've talked about this, but it's their 8th acquisition, right? And it's this idea that they're combining their central tech stack with local knowledge to help power up these businesses. And again, I think that fully squarely works when you have this older category of guest that's probably just gone time and time again back to this same holiday company. It's not something we do so much in the UK culturally, is go back. I think people like to go on to different places, but I know that especially in France, you do have that culture of, well, I go here for the skiing every year and I go here for the summer every year. So there is a lot of you can find that repeat guest and you can bring them into your ecosystem. And I guess that's their bet. They're going to bring them into their ecosystem and then open them up to the different things that they do. What do you think, my friend?
I think my first question was how much of that inventory is unique? And it sounds like maybe quite a bit, because if they're super old school and they're not listed on these other platforms, then I think it's a huge move for Holidu. I also think it's going to be an interesting one for the actual host of the properties, because I'm wondering if you're used to a certain type of guest who is using an archaic website to book, or who is kind of that repeat visitor. I'm curious, like Holidu is going to bring in, I think, a different type of guest to these hosts. And so I'm curious what's going to happen, because I think a lot of times on these platforms that are much more popular, the expectations are higher, maybe, for accommodation, because they have more experience. And so I think it'll be good eventually, but I'm curious as well about the learning curve. I think there might be a bit of a learning curve with the types of guests that are coming in, maybe some of the types of requests, things that they expect. I also I'm not sure that these hosts are going to use a PMS. Like, I mean, they're having a look at some of the sites. You're right. They look like something out of the 90s. And so I can't really imagine a host like that would like use a PMS or even know what it is or even see the need for it. So I don't
I
know.
think
I don't know if it's going to tip the needle too much, but I mean, 35,000 properties is significant. I'm also curious how often those properties are listed. So I think a lot of times in these mergers, we see this like, oh, there's X number of properties. Okay, but are they? Is it somebody's like second home and they are just listed, let's say 2 months out of the year, or is it like an actual full time short term rental property? That they're gaining in terms of that supply. So I'm left with a lot of questions more than opinions, I think, yet.
what I liked was that your cat was clearly left with a lot of questions about the whole thing as well. The cat was really wanting to get in there. We had Sadie a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Luna. Luna loves to make an appearance. I had two cats in addition to my dog. I used to joke that I have an entire adoption center. And one of my other cats they grew up together. She and Luna are from the same litter and everything. She passed away a couple of months ago, and since then, Luna has been very demanding of my attention. She just wants to be held all the time, and I call her my cat dog because literally people come over and she just lays back like a dog and lets people rub her belly. I've never seen the likes of it. So
Well, look, that's sweet. I mean, that's sweet, and it's sweet that she wants to get him on the podcast. I like that.
She does.
Like
She's
that.
like, now you're not paying attention to me. I don't understand.
Yeah. So onto your point about the uniqueness of the inventory, I think it's a mixed bag, right? I from what I can see, I think it's more. I think this deal can be looked at as more of a guest play than a host play, because I do think that the 20 million unique website visitors is not insignificant. And for me, it's about consumer behavior. So it's like, where do you go to book your holiday? How do you book it? And when you're booking it, oh, look at all these potential other options I can see. Oh, the website looks more professional now and I'm being linked out to different places. And that's where the investment in AI, right? So the AI agent, the agentic conversation that will happen as well might cause you to book something you didn't think you were going to book when you arrived on the website. You and I often talk about how it's property rather than location, we think, that maybe starts the buying journey. So the more locations you can put on the map right now for your guest to see, the more you can maybe pull that guest into different inventory that they hadn't thought about before. That certainly with the Chambre Haute, I know I'm mispronouncing this for any French listeners, apologies. The one I think is interesting is gîte.fr, because my understanding of a gîte is that it is catered, right? And we've been to a couple ourselves. I mean, amazing. Like, everyone sort of sits around, has breakfast by the pool. And I remember one year we got really unlucky. I made a friend. I made a fast friend. I made a mistake. First day I made a fast friend with this guy that was cycling. And then every morning he'd come and talk to me about the cycling routes. And Jasmine would just be like sat there over breakfast giving me daggers. She'd be like, this is the best part of my day. And you're having conversations with this Belgian man again. And I was like, I'm sorry, he just keeps coming over. Anyway, so that's what I think about when I think about breakfast at Gîtes. But you get the most, they're always really well catered, always really friendly. And to your point about how often are these homes available? Well, like, they're available all year, like 12 months, right? If they're working it as a business. And my bet would be that what I think the Holidu partnership will do for them is help stretch out peak season into shoulder season. And just get eyeballs to when they're like dropping prices, because I think people associate a Gîte holiday that's catered to be slightly more expensive. Whereas I know that those entrepreneurs, those hoteliers, guest house owners would love to have a longer season. And I think they'll find offer deals earlier in the year when they're ramping up and later in the year when they're about to close down. So I think that's potentially interesting. And I also like the fact that it's more of, I know you'll like this, I'm saying words to impress you here. It's more of the merging of the lodging type, right? So like, why do we try and see ourselves as being completely separate from a hotel, a guest house, as bring it all in and give the customer what they want on one platform to choose? And again, I guess that's part of Holidu's bet.
I think it's a smart move. I really hope they can help with some of their websites. That was my main thing.
And let's book a Gîte. Me, you, the cats,
Mara,
Jack, and the club.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, tell me, Sarah, what we got next? We're talking about class action, aren't we? So what do I got here? So Oh God,
Yeah.
love her.
So basically, there is a class action suit that has been filed against Booking.com in Europe. As the American on the show, I thought I'd take this one because we're famously litigious, ridiculously so. But yeah, super interesting one here. Basically, this all comes down to the parity clauses that Booking.com had a lot of the hoteliers sign. And it has been overruled basically by the European courts, who say that it violates anti-competition laws, which I'm sure it does on the surface. So the European Court of Justice has sort of launched their ruling, and as part of this, it's not. It was initially started by German hotels. So the original suit had 63 German hotels involved in that. And now that the ruling has come out, there's now a class action suit. So basically, on the back of, for those people who maybe don't understand what a class action suit is, essentially on the back of one case that was won by a group of German hotels, those 63 hotels, there is now legal precedent to open up a class action suit, which is now any hotel anywhere in Europe that has been impacted by these parity clauses. There's no mention in the article of this expanding to short-term rentals, but I can't imagine that it would not. And affected parties have until the 31st of July to get involved in the class action suit. And this could, like, if they win, it could mean a lot of money that Booking.com would be out. Right now, just in the German case, so not including any of the other countries, there are approximately 2,000 hotels participating in the class action suit. And their claims value is $750 million euros without interest. So I think it's probably going to be quite a lot more. And if you compare that with Booking.com's overall revenue, it's definitely a significant piece of the pie. So it could for sure have a dent. So I don't know, what do you think? Anti-competition, Europeans are always talking about these things. I think Booking is, not only Booking, but all of the OTAs that have kind of instituted these sort of parity clauses. I think they're all going to be under fire soon if it continues.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's very significant because, so I guess my gut reaction, first of all, is to say, I think if you sign a deal, then you sign a deal. And I think that you can probably move forward with a way of working, but I don't necessarily think that they should retrospectively be charged. But I mean, again, I won't wade too much into the politics of it. Let's dance around it a bit before I do. But that's just like my initial gut reaction, is that as a hotelier, you've chosen to use that platform fully knowing what you've signed up to. You ultimately didn't have to sign up to the platform, but you did because Booking.com is so good at generating guests for you. Mm-hmm. The wider point, though, I think it's really significant that the European Union, as you've said again, are going after a digital hegemon, right? So they're saying we want to create as much as possible an open market to allow people to generate direct bookings, or have a wider distribution mix. And this off the back, if you see it off the back of the Digital Markets Act, it's not unusual. What I find slightly unusual is that I've always felt that Booking.com was very much on the inside of the European Union and knew the rules and knew how to play the game, being a Dutch company and being like a symbol of like European growth. And my God, they've had an amazing like 25 years, right? Or whatever. But at Booking.com, and they continue to have it. They continue to grow. So in that respect, it maybe feels that the European Court of Justice has slightly surprised Booking.com with this, that they're actually going to run with it. But it's significant for sure. My mind goes to the fact that we're in a time where the OTA model has never been more challenged than it is right now. So this probably feels like the last thing that Booking.com need, when they're already kind of fighting the change in distribution and the AI models that are coming. But I like it, and I think moving forward, it's completely fair and reasonable that they have to have relationships with their suppliers that don't allow them to lock them in this way. I think it could go to short-term rental. It would be very. I assume lots of people just either won't read the article, won't read about it, and won't be aware that it's happening. Plus, if you're a host, you might have only taken 10 bookings on Booking.com over the last 2 years. Well, you'll have taken more than that, but right, you might have only taken 100 bookings, and it might not be worth you chasing that half of that commission back.
Yeah.
I guess fracturing. So what, I imagine you've got a lot of fairly big hotels that will go first on this, and then the smaller ones might think about it later. Whereas with short-term rental, even if you manage those properties, if you manage on behalf of an owner, will you then go and chase back the commissions that you could have won? I suspect not. So yeah, so I can't see it going too much into short-term rentals, but I do think it's super, super significant. And I think anything that opens up and stops like the bigger players dominating has got to be a good thing. And, Booking.com has to convince its suppliers that it's worth putting your hotel on Booking.com. I like it that the relationship needs to push back in that direction, right? Incentivize me. So I spend a lot of time in the US, as you know, and what I'm hearing from property managers in the US is that a lot of them are getting sweetheart deals to say, from Booking.com to say, you'll be commission free for 12 months, or you'll be commission free for the first 6 months, just to get the inventory on the platform, right? So that's a real change. And I love to see it. I love to see that. But at the same time, I also, for the same reason, feel like if you were in a different landscape back then and you signed a deal that was different, then I don't know.
The devil's advocate piece, there's a devil's advocate piece at the very end of the article, which is basically like what part of Booking.com's lawyers are alleging, which is there's a lot of lazy hosts and a lot of lazy hotel owners and operators out there, and they have used Booking.com to get that inventory, essentially. And especially with a hotel, it's a lot easier than perhaps with a short-term rental, especially if you're an individual host. Maybe you don't have your own booking website. Even if you do, like, what do you call it? And it has to be really clear for people to be able to go to that direct booking site. Whereas with a hotel, well, this is the Marriott in, Barcelona. It's easy to find their direct booking site. And so I think the parity clauses, especially as it relates to the hotels, definitely is the OTAs trying to recoup some of those losses, because for sure there's going to be tons of people who, I do this all the time, especially if it's a hotel. Like, I'll go online and I find it on an OTA because that has all of the inventory that I could possibly look at, and I have more or less an idea of prices, and then I go and look for it direct. So I basically use it as a search engine, not as a booking engine for me, especially if it's really easy to find. And if there's no difference in price, then I'll book it on the OTA. But if there's a difference in price, then I'll book it direct. So I get where Booking.com's coming from, because otherwise, people are using them as a search engine rather than as a booking engine. But the price parity clauses, I don't know if I fully agree. Like, maybe there could be a halfway house, which is like, it can't be more than, I don't know, 5% difference or 10% difference or whatever it is, not the full like 15, or the standard commission that they charge. I think that's where they get into some issues.
Yeah, I mean, they're under threat, aren't they? For sure. So I think people have used Airbnb to do their marketing for them for years. So, I agree with you. They've rolled into that. And what I'll always do as well, so I book a lot of Barcelona trips, and when I find a good hotel, I will then go back to it. So the first time I've booked it might be on Booking.com, but I've got a couple of faves that I really like staying in, for all the reasons that are unique to the trip that I'm taking. And I will just now, because I trust them, I go directly back there. So even though, I might now be on my 10th trip, the origins of that relationship started on Booking.com.
Sure.
Right. And that's them serving the purpose that they're serving for you. So you could also say, well, look at all these high commissions and go, but really you're looking at it, you're attributing it to one transaction. And really, if you're doing your job properly, you'll get that person back. Or if you're doing your job properly, you'll get them back somewhere else in the world if you've got a few different hotels. So I do think it's interesting though, and I think it can't be so I was at the an award show on Wednesday with I joined the CEO of Star, so I joined Andy for the Visit England Awards, and I was sat next to somebody from Expedia, and he was talking to me. He was on the hotel side of Expedia, so I was sort of learning bits and bobs about that. But he was saying, for them at the senior level, the noise they're hearing from the exec team there is it's all about loyalty. So that's the massive focus. It's all that's the real buzz phrase at the moment is like, how do we get this guest to stay in our ecosystem? And what the reason he was saying that was in the context of short-term rentals and hotels, the teams talking to each other more, because they realized that someone who books their corporate trip, 4 days away in Barcelona for business, then might book their villa holiday in August with their kids and their family, right? On the same platform if you can get them. So they're really doubling down on loyalty, and I just think it's part of that same thing, right? The how you're finding the guest is really, it's up in the air at the moment. Everyone feels that. All of the different major flags, OTA flags, feel that. Therefore, they're trying to double down on the customer that is very used to booking on their system and likes the interface, has got their card details safe, has never had a card cloned or an incident of fraud, and feels very protected by the ecosystem. Like, let's bring that customer in. And that's where, like, booking.com have got hotels, they've got car rental, they've got short-term rentals, they've got all of those things. And so again, I think they will see this as more evidence that right now it's important to focus on the customer they've already won and keep winning them.
I agree. Should we move on to our next one, Leo? You're going to be excited about this one.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
It's about UK travel market trends. Tell us what's been going on.
Okay, here we go. So my beloved UK, and actually, interestingly, we're using an article from Focus right here, and actually, it's the coastline is that they're showing in the picture is the coast that I live on. So there you go, very very close to home. So the UK travel sector recorded 53.5 billion in gross bookings in 2024, making a 7% year-over-year increase. Online bookings now represent 88% of all travel, and that's expected to reach 90% by 2027. Interestingly, direct supplier channels dominate, accounting for almost 80% of the online bookings. And this is the really significant bit, which I want to ask you about, because I don't know so much if you do this yet, but we'll come to that. But mobile usage is surging. So mobile bookings hit 46%, and that's expected to surpass even desktop bookings by as early as next year. So really, really, really interesting. And then obviously the bit that you're teasing me about is the fact that we are now looking at rail travel being on the agenda for the first time in a long time in the UK. So it's almost like my podcasting pressure, Sarah, has caused this to pass. Should we say that?
Well, I think really what caused it to pass are the additional tariffs from the Clean Air Act that has been put in place.
Well, let's say me and the Clean Air Act, yeah? Let's say
airline travel much more expensive.
Yeah, let's say that. But also we've invested, and the newest administration in the UK has created Great British Railways, so has renationalised the railways. So there's big investment coming in our rail industry, and it's good to see that people are taking it seriously, because the only bit of high-speed rail that we have is the bit that brings you into the UK from France, and then you hit this very archaic system. So if you're a traveller looking at how you get to the UK, it's very obvious that you're going to fly at the moment, unless you're going to London or somewhere near London, because you just can't get any further. And we need to stop that. We need to improve that. So it's great to see that the investment is coming. Great to see that it's there. On this point on mobile booking, Sarah, have you ever booked anything on? Have you booked a holiday on your phone?
I do not book things on a phone. I'm still archaic. I like to see everything on the big screen, and I look at all my options, and I have tons of tabs and windows open. No, I have created some wish lists before. So imagine I'm on the metro or something and I'm planning a trip. I'll start looking around on Airbnb or on Vrbo and start liking properties, or on Booking, whatever. But I always book on the computer. I like to see everything in big, and I want to look at all the or read the reviews, and I just find it uncomfortable to book on a phone. At least do all the research. I do all the research for sure on a computer, and as I'm there, I might as well just get the booking done. So
yeah,
the mobile booker.
I think it's Gen Z that are doing it. I think it's those Gen Zs that are doing it. But clearly, there's the I think this article shows us that if you're a property manager, you really need to be making sure that your site is mobile enabled, that there's, especially if you're linking out and trying to get bookings to come in from Instagram. So I think it's very significant. I think that's the headline for me. Obviously, I love the rail element of it. And I think if we can legislate in a sensible way around not putting people off coming to the UK ever, but that's important not to do that in the act on making air travel more expensive. What has to come with it, though, is rail travel has to become cheaper then to try and capitalize on that, or you're just going to put off visitor numbers. But alongside that, I do think that the bit that really caught my eye is you have to be you have to be ready for the fact that you're, and that's what Airbnb has done incredibly well, is that I think a lot of those booking journeys start on the Airbnb app. I don't think people bother going to desktop because their app is so usable. So what can we be doing, actionable insights as property managers, to make sure that our websites feel like a safe place to book? Because no one's going to put in their bank details to a tiny screen where they have to type out the long number. It's just not going to happen, right? Your details need to be remembered from the last transaction, or Apple Pay enabled, or whatever phone you use, right?
I agree. Well, let's see.
Gang, are we on time?
We're on time. Amazing.
They're going to be so proud of us, aren't they? Over there in central office. Okay. Sarah, it's so lovely to see you, my friend. I just, I can't believe we're 10 days away from a proper hangout in person. How fun is that?
I'm so excited. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So if you haven't got your ticket yet, you haven't sort of registered your interest. Sorry, you don't need a ticket. If you haven't registered your interest, June 19th, we'll be with the guys at Scale, and obviously Truvia sponsoring as well. We'll be having a Barcelona social come after work, and we'll also be recording live in person with Damien, which will be super fun as well. So yeah, if you're not there yet and you're in the Barcelona area, why not? Come and register your interest. All right, Sarah, have a great week, my friend. Nice to see you.
You too, Leo. Same here.
And all you at home, if you've enjoyed today's show, please hit like, share, subscribe in all the usual social places. Until next week, many thanks.